I don't particularly like talking about this period in my life, but I feel that the time is right. When I was a tween, I lived with my mother in the mountains around Santa Cruz, and at the time we were below poverty level poor. My mother had a friend up there that owned a large area of property, so he would let us stay in a trailer on his land. Our trailer was very small and set beside a garden. A chain link fence ran around this garden, intended to keep the owner's dog out, among other animals. Deer and coyotes, among other things, were very common in the area. Also inside the fenced area was a shed-like structure built like a tiny house, but it only had a single room on the inside. This room had electricity, and since our actual trailer didn't, I spent a lot of my time in there. I was super into video games. There's one thing you should know right now, before I continue. This small fenced-in area was only a small part of the property. Most of the property was heavily forested. I also refused to leave the fenced-in area, as the owner's dog had been mistreated by children in the past and was very sketchy towards me. If I was alone, it would bite at me even through the fence. The fence was tall, at least 7 feet high and very sturdy, so as long as the gate was closed, I was safe. That said though, it was a tiny piece of property. There was no one else around for miles and miles. Now, I tell you all this because I think it is important that you understand what kind of setting this was before I really get into the story. So, we have a fenced-in location that seems fairly safe, containing a trailer as well as a single powered room that is separate from the trailer. Nothing else around for miles. My mother's van is also parked out in front of the gate to the fenced-in area, and a single unpaved road runs from the garden for about a mile to the main house. Now, I brought friends up there to sleep over every now and then. We all thought it was pretty cool, you know, like camping out, sort of. Besides, we got our own place to stay and play video games all night. Like, that's like any kid's fucking dream come true. The downside was simple though. When it got dark out, it got fucking dark. No cities were around, and the trailer was never lit up. There was also no bathroom in this building, and you would have to walk blindly through the garden in order to get to the trailer to use it. Odd things would happen out there from time to time. It was always something that could be somewhat easily explained away, though. Noises like people working at night sometimes, or once a friend and I were sitting out in the garden, and we saw a shadow the size of a small bear bound up a tree, but for some reason the tree didn't shake. Like, there was no weight on it or something. The dog also creeped me out, but you know, angry dog, me, child, it happens. Now, I'm kind of a scaredy cat, and I always have been. I have trouble walking through a lit house if I'm all alone. My friends, however, tend to be more outgoing. It just happens to be the kind of people I get along with, I guess. So, at this time, I had a friend over, Jacob. We were staying up all night playing Sonic on my Genesis, which was hooked up to a ratty old television that we had set up in the small room. We started playing as the sun was setting, and by the time we were finishing up, it was around 2 in the morning, I think. And that's when we heard it. We had turned off the game and were getting ready to find something else to play. And there was this rumbling in the woods behind the room we were in, like somebody was rolling something incredibly heavy around. We hadn't heard it before because the TV's volume had been so loud. I immediately got goosebumps, but Jacob was not really worried about it. But it's not like there was someone's house or yard right over there. It was just forest for miles, and it really sounded like someone was building something or some shit, dragging or rolling something really big. Eventually, Jacob convinced me to chill out and just play some more games. I agreed on the condition that we would turn down the volume so we could hear if something happened. So we started playing, and I didn't even notice the noise anymore because I was getting immersed. A couple hours later, Jacob said he had to use the bathroom. I was feeling fine by then, so I was okay by myself while he left to go to the trailer to relieve himself. But he was taking a while, so eventually I decided I was going to go check on him. Besides, I needed to use the bathroom at that point and could grab a snack while I was in the trailer. I opened the door to leave, and he was just standing at the doorway, right outside the door, facing it. It scared the shit out of me. I asked him, "What are you doing?" But he just stood there, blocking the exit. I realized he must have snuck up to the door because I definitely heard him walk away from the room, but I never heard him come back. It was super quiet out there without the noises of the city. I should have been able to hear him. He refused to say anything or respond at all. He just stood there. I said, "Dude, you're really creeping me out." But it was not unlike him to try and scare me like this. He'd done shit like it before. Finally, I decided to just go to the trailer and use the bathroom, partially because I knew that my mother was asleep in there. I told him what I was doing, then moved past him. When I pushed past him, though, his skin felt freezing. I jumped, but it was a cold night, and he had been standing out there for like 30 minutes, so I figured that was to be expected. Still, though, there was something really weird about it that bugged me. I walked as quickly as I could over to the trailer. He followed me, like, right on my heels. It was unnerving. I joked a little, saying, "You already surprised me by scaring me at the door, man. The joke's over already." He didn't respond. I finally got to the trailer and walked in. He didn't follow, just stayed there at the doorway. I checked on my mom, who was fast asleep, then turned to go into the bathroom. Now, it being a porta potty, we kept the bathroom door shut because it smells bad. When I reached for the door and tried to open it, though, it was locked. A nervous voice came from behind the door. I'm in here." I quickly turned to look at Jacob. The door was still open, but there was nothing outside but pitch black night. I froze in terror. I would have heard the bathroom door open if he had come in behind me and gone that way. And there's no way to do it quietly since it creaks like a motherfucker in that trailer. I yelped so loud that it woke up and startled my mom. I stared at the doorway, unable to bring myself to move a muscle. So she got up and walked over to the doorway and looked out. Not seeing anything, she closed the door behind her and asked me what was wrong. By now, Jacob had finished up and was coming out of the bathroom, acting perfectly normal, albeit a bit confused. I explained what happened. Jacob said he was just taking a long time in the bathroom, basically. And neither of them believed me at all, no matter how much I insisted. My mom was sure that I just got sleepy and imagined it. And, Jacob just thought I was trying to prank him. So, my mom gets out a big flashlight and walks us back to the room. She tells us to go to sleep, then leaves and goes back to bed. Now, I should have mentioned this sooner, but this room doesn't have any windows or ways of looking outside. So, after a while, I calm back down a little. I'm telling myself that my mom was right. I must have had like a waking dream or something. The dark playing tricks on my eyes. Jacob insists that he was in the bathroom the whole time, and I'm inclined to believe him because there's just no way to really get around without being heard. So I settle down. I'm a little rattled at this point, but I'm thinking to myself that I can just sleep it off through the night. It keeps going like that for a long time now. Suddenly, the barking stops and gets replaced by whimpering. We hear the dog run away. There are about 45 seconds of silence before we hear something new. a small scratching sound on the back wall of the room. We both try to be as silent as we can and wait for something to happen. Eventually it stops, and after 5 or so minutes of silence, Jacob decides to be brave. He insists that he's going to get my mother up, tell her something crazy is happening, and we'll just go from there with some kind of divine adult protection, no doubt. I wish that he hadn't left me alone, but there was no way I was going out there. Never, ever. He armed himself as best as he could with a tennis racket that was in the room with us. He took a couple deep breaths and opened the door before dashing out. I closed it as quick as I could behind him. In less than 30 seconds, I hear a scream. And not long after that, the door flew open, and he came back in looking pale as a ghost. He was breathing like he had just run a marathon, and his eyes were wide and bulging out of his face. I asked him, "Dude, what's going on?" like 4 times before he finally starts getting words out. He tells me that he walked out there, and as soon as he was walking through the garden, he saw my mom just standing there. He tried to talk to her, but she stared at him with a blank expression. Getting super creeped out because of what would happen to me earlier, he took a couple more steps towards her, telling her that he thought something was in the woods. Suddenly, an awkward smile formed on her lips. Then he realized something terrible. He hadn't noticed sooner because of how dark it was and how much of a hurry he had been in, but she was on the other side of the fence. Now, the door to this room does not lock, and as I explained earlier, this room had no windows. He had been trying to move stuff in front of the door as he told the story to me, and by the end of it, I was helping him. In retrospect, whatever was harassing us seemed to be averse to actually entering the room or the trailer because the fake Jacob wouldn't come in either time, and he could have, really easily. And this room was far from sturdy. Either way, we stacked everything that we could against the door, thinking somehow that, like the cartoons, this would totally, definitely, absolutely keep the creature out. For the rest of the night, we heard scratches coming from every side of the room. I cried. Jacob looked like his mind had left his body with fear. At one point, I thought I heard it speak, too. I heard from right next to where I was resting against the wall, in my mother's voice, quietly speak. Same exact phrasing and tone she had used earlier in the night. "What's wrong?" Followed immediately by, "Go to sleep." The worst part was it was a completely different intonation, kind of like taking 2 different sentences out of 2 different movie scenes of the same person talking, and then clipping them together. The sun eventually came up and the scratching disappeared. We heard my mom come to get us, this time actually hearing footsteps. But we absolutely refused to leave the room. My mom had to get the property owner and have him take the door off. When we saw that it was actually her, I burst into tears again. We never had an experience like that again, and eventually I moved away. But that night, it still haunts me. And I still refuse to go out at night unless I'm with a bunch of people, and definitely never living in the woods again after that.